Shri Ram, Jai Jai Shri Ram. This is the GRE Awa Issue Prompt, which you will find in the pool of issues ETS website. So you are given 30 minutes and 6 grade points are available, and if you have to write an essay on this. So what are you going to do? We can usually learn much more from people whose views we share than from people whose views contradict our own. Disagreement can cause stress and inhibit learning. So, like I already said in my earlier talk on how to go about writing good essays, remember these are all debatable issues, moot issues. Moot means debatable, M-O-O-T. Moot, interestingly, also means no point debating, something that is done and dusted, and therefore, suppose there is an accident, it's moot to discuss what exactly led to the situation instead of actually taking care of the people injured. So, moot means debatable. Moot also means no longer useful debating. So anyway, these are all debatable topics. So the reality, the truth is somewhere in between. We can always learn from people whose views we share and also from those who contradict, and perhaps we can learn more from those who contradict our opinions. So your introduction should be, well, the speaker takes an extreme position and assumes that we usually learn much more from those whose views are similar to ours than from those who contradict. Full stop. The reality is far from that. We can always learn from people whose views are similar and also from those who contradict. And all this depends on the quality of debate and the quality of thinking involved in the others and ourselves too. That's my introduction. Now, I've just written a few points here. Dialectics. Now, dialectics means thesis plus antithesis is equal to synthesis. So, suppose I say A is good for health. You can come up, and I'll give you 10 reasons why A is good for health. Somebody can say A is bad for health, and we should allow that person to speak. And he'll come up with 10 reasons why A is bad. So, then all the listeners can arrive at a better understanding of A. That's called synthesis. This is exactly what happens in a parliament. So we have a dialectical approach. We take a dialectical approach. It's called dialectics. That means you assess the pros and cons. So if you do not do that, then you will suffer from a situation which is called groupthink or herd mentality. Groupthink is when people take decisions without applying critical thinking. They end up taking bad decisions, and it results in all kinds of disaster. A great example, you can write one more paragraph. The Pearl Harbor attack during the Second World War. Many naval officers from Washington warned the base that there is a likelihood of an attack. But the people sitting there in Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, they were not convinced. And instead they were rationalizing why an attack is unlikely to happen, and we know the rest of the history. The attack happened and America entered the Second World War. So Pearl Harbor attack is an excellent example of groupthink. Even in Indian history, 1962 war, when China attacked India, our Prime Minister Nehru was writing letters to John F. Kennedy, the president, then President of America at the time. I think he was the 35th president. He was begging John F. Kennedy to send F-16s. When actually the truth was Indian Air Force was far superior to the Chinese at that time, because Indian Air Force personnel participated in the Second World War. So we could very well have thrashed China had we used our Indian Air Force. But for some strange reason, Nehru did not do that, in spite of the fact. And the the Air Force officers and Army officers would not want to correct Nehru, because Nehru was such a larger-than-life figure. Later on, they wrote their books and memoirs in which they expressed this sentiment. So, a disaster, and India lost very badly. Whereas actually we should have won that war. So, we can actually learn much more from people who contradict our views. Well, now some more examples. Can you play the devil's advocate? A devil's advocate simply means a person who comes up with controversial questions with the function being to identify the truth and so that everyone understands the topic better. So there's nothing wrong in being a devil's advocate. If you have heard of the book Six Thinking Hats by Edward D. Bono, One of the hats is black hat thinker. Black hat thinkers means basically those people who raise all kinds of uncomfortable questions. And in every group, you need a black hat thinker. Otherwise, we will all fall into the ditch, which is group thinking and herd mentality. In any court of justice, there is an argument. There is a public prosecutor and a defense lawyer. So the jury is also there. In America, you have a jury system. A jury is a group of people drawn from the general public who don't have any criminal antecedents and who assess, they weigh the evidence and then help the judge take a decision. So if you look at all these aspects, now in one paragraph you will talk about yes, we can learn from those people whose views are same. And what kind of people should they be? Let us say there is a seminar of scientists, all of them very learned in a particular subject. When they pool their knowledge, it is useful, everyone benefits. But when you pool your ignorance, everyone loses. So what are you pooling? Ignorance or knowledge? That's what decides whether we learn and benefit in the process or not. And if you debate with people who have hardly any knowledge, who are extremely bigoted or opinionated and are not willing to examine their own belief systems, then you will only have disagreement and strife. You see, disagreement can cause stress and inhibit learning. Well, immature people are always like that. You see, there are so many religious fanatics in this world who cannot tolerate the slightest criticism. In fact, we must reform everything. In fact, in the Indian Constitution, the fundamental duty number 8, to develop a scientific temper, a spirit of inquiry, humanism and reform. But unfortunately, if we try to reform too much, or in fact even talk about reform, you can attract a lot of hostility. So this is a very sad situation. Disagreement, we should always agree to disagree agreeably. So I think I leave it to you. You can write a good response. Your introduction I already told you. And then your first paragraph you will say, now let us see in what situations we can actually learn from people whose views we share. You can write about scientists getting together in a seminar, a symposium where they share their research and everyone benefits, and that leads to some kind of a discovery or some intervention which relieves a world problem. Then you can write 2 paragraphs on that, and then rest of it, like I told you, you can write paragraphs based on whatever I just discussed, taking a dialectical approach. This is what happens in the parliament, and playing the devil's advocate. In fact, in every team, we should hire a person whose job is to play the devil's advocate. So, you can write a good response now listening to me. If you want me to give you feedback, send your response on WhatsApp to my number 891-906-9803. Jai Shri Ram.